Hi, I'm Sophie. Welcome to the Love Life Lessons podcast. This is a space where we dive into everything relationships. Whether your marriage feels disconnected, you're craving deeper emotional intimacy, or you just want to feel like a team again, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm here to give you tools, the mindset shift, and the heart level breakthroughs that help you turn your marriage around from the inside out. Real communication, real connection, real transformation without shame, pressure, or pretending that everything is fine. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's get into today's love life lesson. You're exactly where you need to be. Welcome back. I am so excited today to be interviewing one of my amazing clients, Samantha. She has a beautiful story and I just can't wait to dive in. So, welcome, Samantha, to the podcast. Thank you for being here with me today.
Hi.
Hi there. So, I would love to hear a little bit for you about what was going on in your marriage when you found me.
So we had been together at that point 19 and a half years, married for 12 and a half, two kids, and that we had been there had been problems for a number of years that for both of us on both sides, we both had issues with marriage. We'd either brushed them under the carpet or we tried to talk to each other, but I was very scared of being completely honest in case that upset him and he thought that I was hiding something. So ultimately, he was right. But we had gone through couples counselling twice, and the second time round, which we were in literally just before I joined the program, it was making more progress than we ever had done, to be honest. But what I was getting stuck on in that couples counselling is I would always walk away feeling really heavy, and whether I'd offloaded, how my week had been, or whether he'd offloaded how his week had been, it all felt really heavy. And it came to a head. We went on holiday, family holiday, and it was really hard work. It was really tense. We weren't sharing a bedroom. I had one kid in with me, and he had the other one, and it was really hard week. And at one point, just before we went out for dinner on like our penultimate night, he turned around and said, I want a divorce. There were a few things that were going on just in our lives that he said, once those are all sorted, just sort of like practical things like house stuff and family stuff. Once those are sorted, he said, I want a divorce. And at that point, I think whilst I knew there was a problem, I hadn't truly appreciated that it was perhaps as serious as that. I had contemplated whether it would be better for us to part, but I'd never vocalized it. So hearing him say that was huge. And I just didn't know what to do and knew that I had to do something, but what I didn't know. And I remember like going out for dinner and just being an absolute mess and having to, tell my eldest daughter, who was 11 at the time, that our mummy has got a really bad hay fever because I was just crying constantly. I had my sunglasses on inside, and I don't know whether she bought it or not, but it was awful. And I remember thinking, right, I can't. I'd always at this point, I've always thought like, if he was just a bit kinder, if he was a bit more supportive, if he was just a bit more whatever that word was, everything would be fine. I would feel closer. I would want physical intimacy. It was always like I was always waiting on him to do something to change. And I would have those conversations with him, and then I think they would land. And then, he might take the kids to school a couple of times in a week, and then it would stop. And even when he did that, I never really felt like we were connecting ever. Anyway, I was scrolling on Instagram and I found one of your posts, Sophie, that said something along the lines of basically it resonated with me. It said, are you waiting for someone else for them to change? If you are, it will never change. Change comes from within, or words to that effect. And I thought, wow, okay, this is exactly what I need. I need to take control of this myself. I cannot just sit and wait. I need to take control. So that is what I did. And I scrolled through a load of your stories and your posts. And I was like, this sounds like something that could be potentially life changing. And at that point, I kind of felt like I had nothing to lose. Like something needed to change and I needed to do it myself. So it was that post that got me to contact your team to start the process.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing. It sounds so painful to be in that position. And I remember, like myself, when my husband asked for a divorce, just how shocking it is and how out of the blue, and especially on holiday as well, when you're supposed to be having a nice time. That sounds just so painful. So what did that disconnection, like leading up to that, what did that disconnection look like for you in everyday life?
It was almost soft. Like we lived our own lives. Like we were roommates. Like, we got on, we didn't argue all the time. There was perhaps an undercurrent of tension, perhaps. In the morning I would come downstairs and think, oh, like what's today going to be like? Or, you know, uh, if I wanted to perhaps ask him for some help with the kids, I would be worried about what his reaction would be. So I just almost made myself as small as possible to get through the day, and thought that meant that everything was happy. So I guess hearing him say he wasn't, knowing that he had, we had issues, and the fact that there was a lack of physical intimacy was what kind of pushed us to go to couples counselling in the first place. And couples counselling did kind of bring a lot of things to light that, neither of us particularly aware of. And whilst it was helpful, we only ever talked about our problems, which meant that we would come away heavy with problems. And then if we spoke about them during the week, and he's such a talker, he loves talking about his feelings and talking it all out. I struggled with that. I don't anymore. And I think, if I'm honest, that is completely down to you and how you kind of taught me to communicate, because I just didn't know how to. So it was just easier not to, and just sit and listen but not listen. I think that's one thing that I've really learned from this program, and like the the workshops and pieces that we've done together, is how to communicate and how to actually listen and to help them feel heard, because that was the key thing, that he ultimately didn't feel heard. So when I was thinking, if I just, keep the peace, don't antagonize him, then everyone would be happy. And actually that wasn't what he wanted either. He wanted, and still does, that his core is like, I need to feel close to you. I need to feel physically close to you and emotionally close to you. And me just kind of allowing things to go on around us whilst not rocking the boat wasn't giving him that. It wasn't giving it to me either, but I felt that as long as no one was shouting, everyone was happy. And that wasn't the case.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think so many people can relate to that, thinking that if you just keep the peace and the kids are happy, your husband's happy, then everything will magically be okay. But for you, Samantha, what was going on for you internally during that time? Like, was it affecting you in other ways too?
I just felt numb. I just felt numb. I felt like my world was falling apart around me. And I had to carry on living. I couldn't just take myself off and wallow. I had to keep going. I got 2 young kids, I work, I couldn't just spiral. I needed to do something, and I needed to take control. And taking control is not something that I usually do. It doesn't really come easy for me particularly. So, but I realized that he was waiting for me and I was waiting for him. And actually, what I did have control of was me. And at that point, I didn't know what that looked like. But again, I was willing to give anything a go, because I wanted to, if it was going to end, actually hold my head up high and say, I have done absolutely everything I can to keep this marriage together, and I want to keep it together. And actually, if I'm honest, there were parts of me that thought, before he actually said what he said, maybe it would be easier. Like, maybe if we just got divorced, it would be easier. And when he actually asked for those words, that sort of, the relief that I thought at one point that I would get never came. Because I did genuinely think, if he asked for a divorce, maybe, and I used to think, like, lay awake at night and think, how can I get him to divorce me and make it his idea? Like, how can I do that? And I would be looking like online for like houses for me and the kids, and I'd try and sort of romanticize a life without him. And I thought that I'd kind of done that a couple of times, but actually hearing him say those words out loud, when it could have been so easy to turn around and go, yeah, let's just, it hit really hard that actually I did not want this marriage to end. And I was going to do everything I can to fight for it.
Yeah, yeah, that's really powerful. And thanks for your honesty, because I think that so many of us, when we're in a bad marriage or in a marriage that's kind of not fulfilling us, right? Look outside the marriage, like Googling. I remember I Googled houses too, like, oh, this dream life of where I could, go off and start again. So I really appreciate your honesty, because I think that's really, really relatable. And so what made you think, okay, I'm gonna sign up for this program. I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna just do the thing.
So after I saw that post, I think I commented on it to get a bit more information, and I had a call with Luann, and I was still on the fence a bit because I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for. And the group sessions, I'd never done a group session before. Like, what would that look like? And not having one-to-ones weekly or bi-weekly, it all felt really sort of like alien to me. And I didn't know what to expect. So I I spoke to Luann, and then I think I spoke to you before I sort of made the investment and the commitment. And I just thought, actually, do you know what? It's worth the money. Like, I'm sat here worrying about the money instead of worrying about like a divorce and the effect of a divorce on the children and the financial fallout of a divorce. All of those things. And I was thinking, like, what am I doing? Like, I just need to try this. Like, if this is going to work, then it's going to be amazing. And if it doesn't, then I've tried it. So I took the plunge, and I remember my very first group call, and there was only sort of maybe 5 or 6 of us, and it was in summer. And I'd rushed home from swimming, and my husband knew that what I was doing. I talked to him about it, so he was a bit skeptical, but he was on board with it. And we'd even told like the couples counselor that that's what I was planning to do. And actually, after a couple of sessions, a couple of weeks on the program, we stopped couples counseling. So, and I remember coming home from swimming, joining this call, and thinking, like, what is this going to be like? And I absolutely loved it. And I remember thinking, hearing everyone's stories and hearing their wins, and thinking, oh man, like, there was one lady who had been in the program sort of maybe 3 or 4 weeks longer than me. And she said that she'd gone on holiday just before she joined the program, and she'd had basically a similar experience to me on holiday, that it was just awful. And she'd just come back from a weekend away, and it was the best weekend ever. And she was 4 weeks in. I remember thinking, gosh, like, that's incredible. I really want that to be me. I really want that to be me. And I remember thinking, like, and she was another Brit. I remember thinking, like, oh, we've got this girl. Like, we've got this. Like, I was absolutely in awe of her. And then we went to coaching, and I listening to the others, thinking that we're all very different. Like, each circumstance and each actual situation is different, but ultimately we're all going through the exact same thing. And that is what I love about the group coaching sessions. And there are some weeks that I have a coaching question, but actually more often than not, I'm just happy to sit back and listen, because the coaching you give, every single time, not even like 9 times out of 10, every single time you coach someone, it resonates with me for some other reason. Even if the question that they had wasn't something that I necessarily would have thought I needed coaching on, or doesn't apply to me, every single time I come away from a coaching call thinking, I've learned something. I've learned something about me. I've learned something about my relationship. I've learned something about communication. And I never anticipated how powerful those group calls were going to be.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing. I think that's so spot on. I hear that all the time from people joining the program, like, oh, I don't want to do group, or, I don't want to share what's going on in my life, or maybe how am I going to get results without just having that time to focus on me? But it is so powerful to have the group and to have other people that are slightly further ahead from where you are and inspiring you, on the way and on the journey. So I love that. I do remember that call actually. And I know exactly who you're talking about. So yeah. What were your biggest immediate shifts or aha moments where you're like, oh, okay, I've been doing this wrong? Or, what was your biggest shift, would you say?
My first sort of aha shift moment it wasn't actually one of the group calls. It was sitting, going through the modules, and it was visualizing what you want your marriage to be. And it was actually thinking about it. And up until that point, through counseling and just, counseling, therapy, all of that, it was always talking about what the problems were. And actually seeing, what do you want this to look like? Focusing on the positive was so powerful that it's not something I'd ever considered or experienced before, but it was that was the biggest shift for me. Is actually, if I can, and you talk about it a lot about manifesting, I could see this, and the more I sort of sat with it, and there's a meditation in one of the modules where you visualize this, and you go back to your former self to tell her about it, and that sort of meditation where you kind of come out of the world and then back into your doorstep, and that was so powerful. I remember thinking, gosh, I can almost taste this. I feel like I'm in the room with this. And it was that was probably the biggest shift, that it made me want to show up as that person, as opposed to just showing up and seeing what happened. I was like, I really want to be that person that I have visioned, to the point where I don't actually give a damn about him. I want to be that person, and that person is completely within my control. That was the very first and quite massive shift in me, that why am I sat here miserable when I could just be loving life? So let's do that. And obviously there are days when it's not quite so easy. You do get kind of bogged down in things, but that has been my biggest thing throughout this whole process, is show up the way you want to. And every day I do that. Every morning, if we have a crosswords the night before, or I'm spiraling because maybe I've done something to upset him, in the morning, instead of starting the day timid or apologetic, I started strong and happy, and 9 times out of 10 I am met with the same energy. But there was a time when I wasn't. I remember there was a few weeks over the school holidays in the summer where I showed up every morning, and I remember I'd come downstairs really, really hot, and I'd come downstairs in like a tank top and a pair of pants instead of pajamas or whatever. And my youngest was like, "Oh, mommy, you're bum. Why are you bum hanging out?" And I was like, "It's fine. It's just a bum. Daddy doesn't mind." And he just kind of said, "Ugh, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you." And in a sort of derogatory way. And I remember thinking, gosh, even a couple of weeks ago that stung. Whereas now I think I just did like a bit of a twerk in the kitchen and then just carry on with my life. And I just remember thinking, you're not going, no one is going to dampen my bonfire. No one is. If I want to walk around in my pants in my own house because I'm hot, then I will. And if you're going to pay attention to it, and if you're going to have something bad to say about it, then I will twerk, and you're just going to have to deal with that. And it was good, because I could see he was really, I don't know whether he was angry with it, whether he was upset, I don't know what it was, but you could see he was trying not to smile by the end of it, even if he wasn't happy about it at the beginning.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so funny. And it sounds to me, just from what you're sharing, that your self-confidence really improved in that moment. Have you said how has the program and all the work that you've done on yourself improved your self-esteem, would you say, and your self-confidence?
I think I know my worth now, and that's not just within the home and marriage. I actually yesterday, so I have been doing this program for what, 10 months, 8, 9 months, something like that. I've always like steered clear of any sort of conflict, good or bad, like anything that might have some kind of negative energy attached to it. I would never do. I'd never deal with it. Yesterday, I emailed my boss and said, "You don't pay me enough. I'm worth more than this. I want a pay rise, and this is what I'm going to get." And I showed it to my husband just to say, was this all right? He was like, "Whoa, what's happened to you? The girl that I met 20 years ago would never have done that." And I said, and I was really sort of like, "Oh no, have I done the wrong thing?" And he's like, "You have done that. That is beautifully written, but you've come across, you're confident, you're assertive, you're not pushy, you're not bossy." He's like, "Wow, that is incredible." And it felt really good. And I pressed send, feeling great about it. He hadn't replied yet, but like actually, whereas before I'd been like, "Oh, maybe I'm not worth this. Maybe I'm not. Maybe, even if I am, what if he says no? There's all these reasons why." I'm like, "No, sod it. Like, I am worth more than this, and I'm going to ask for it. And if he says no, then, well, he may regret it." But it was a bit like, I am worth more than this. I'm not going to accept anything less than what I'm worth. And I think well, I don't think, I know that is this whole process.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, Samantha, I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see what your boss says. But just the the change in that level of like confidence and self-esteem and really knowing your worth, and we talked so much in the program about that. So I'm so happy for you. And how has your relationship shifted? What have you noticed have been like the biggest changes in your
I
marriage?
think our biggest change is how we communicate. We actually listen to each other. Now, you may remember I had difficulty with this in the beginning. I was happy to sit and listen, but I felt a little bit sort of put out that it wasn't both ways, that I was putting all this energy into listening and hearing, and then it wasn't a two-way street. Like I wasn't able to tell him how I really felt and that he would hear. And you said to me several times, basically just trust the process. Like he will start to model that behavior back. And I was skeptical, to be honest. But I remember when you briefly told us about the Imago method of communication, and where you just ask them to keep going, basically to get it all off their chest. And I remember doing that with him and knowing that I wasn't going to say anything, knowing that normally because I knew what he was going to be talking about, and I knew that I would normally get defensive. I would feel the need to tell him he was wrong. I would feel the need to correct him. And that was my biggest thing about a conversation is, no, you've got this all wrong. Let me put it right for you. And I struggled with that in the beginning, to the point where now it feels alien to me that I would even feel that way. But I remember thinking, I need to tell him that he's wrong. Like he can't have this narrative in his head. It's wrong. That needs to be fixed. But actually, we're going through this Margot method, and I just kept saying to him, like, "Is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything else you want to get off your chest?" And yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. That must have been really hard. And I hear, just get it all off, all off. And at the end of it, you could see visibly he felt lighter. And weirdly, I felt lighter as well, because I just sat and listened. I had validated his feelings without being defensive. I still felt the same way. Like I still felt that he was wrong, but I didn't feel like I had to get that across, because I'd gone in there with that mindset. It meant that I was able just to sit and listen. And quite a few weeks later, he did the same thing to me. And it made me laugh, because I've done it a couple of times with him. And there's no way on earth he would have known what an Imago method was. There was no way he'd researched that. Absolutely no way. But we sat on the sofa and he did it to me. And I was so happy. Like I was laughing at the time. I was thinking, oh my gosh, Sophie was right. He's completely modeling this. And you know what? Being on the receiving end of that method feels really good. Even though I knew what he was doing, even though I knew that it was a style, and that perhaps he wasn't necessarily sort of wanting to hear everything. But even knowing that I could speak uninterrupted and just get all my feelings out was amazing. And coming away from that conversation felt lighter. So yeah, it was a really lovely moment.
Oh, I love hearing that. Yes, and it's so scary. I think what you're sharing, like, why should I have to do this work? Why should I have to put this effort in? But what I'm hearing you say is like he's modeling that back to you, even without having done the program, without knowing the methods, right? He's modeling that behavior back, which is incredible. And so I also wanted to talk to you about this. So you said that you felt you kind of saw him get lighter and you felt lighter. And I was talking to another client yesterday about the somatic coach that I have in the program and like the EFT, like the somatic practices that we do. Did you have any experiences with Nula on the call that you were like,
Yes.
oh, I got to release some of that stress and
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I did. And I have to say the very first call I did with Nuala, I struggled because I didn't come into it tense. And I felt like I was almost like not prepared because I didn't come into it tense, particularly. Not from a marriage point of view. I think it was like really hot over here that day. And my youngest had insisted we go to the car wash where you stay in the car and you get you go through the car wash. She insisted on doing it. It was so hot. And we were stuck in the queue for a good hour in this boiling hot car, and I couldn't have the engine running because we were stuck in this queue. And I tapped on that, just thinking, I don't know what else to say. Like, don't really know, but don't really know what else to say. That's the only thing kind of that was wowed me up a little bit today, not massively. And almost like disappointed that we hadn't had like a bit of a fight that I could have tapped out on, but actually tapping out on that and then learning how to tap and how to sort of reaffirm that that it was okay, that it was good, that you're still good enough, and all these things. Just because you were in a hot car and it was stressing, and I may have snapped at my daughter. Tapping on those things made me calm. And then going around the rest of the call with the other ladies that were also tapping, and just being able to tap into that with them, it was amazing. I was again a little bit skeptical about that, wasn't sure what to expect or how it would work, but it is good. And I do find myself even now, just occasionally, if I feeling myself getting a bit tense about something, getting a bit wound up about something, I will tap, whether that's on my collarbone, on my wrist. Sometimes if I'm sat perhaps around the kitchen table when it's particularly stressful with the kids, then I know that like my husband wants to talk to me about something, and or something's happening, there's just a lot going on. I will sit at the dining room table and just tap my wrist just under the table, and I can feel my whole nervous system just like just coming down, relaxing. And it I think that combined with the communication, it's just been transformational.
yeah, yeah, amazing. And that nervous system piece, is such a huge part of our relationship because when we're stressed or when we've been in this pattern of communication that feels really challenging over time, like our nervous system really prepares for a fight, every time we get into that pattern. So I love this. How does your marriage feel? Because I was hearing you at the beginning, when you came in, he said that he wanted a divorce. You had been Googling, places that you can live with your kids. What's your marriage like today, Samantha?
Do you know what it is? We actually had a conversation about it this morning. We are honestly, we're not back to where he would like to be from a physical intimacy point of view, definitely. But I said to him this morning, literally this morning, I said to him, the progress that I feel in our marriage, I feel not only more connected, but less disconnected. I feel like I can be truly honest with you. And I know that one, you will listen, and two, that it won't be held against me. That I can have the conversations with him that I shied away from because I want to hear him. I want to know what he's feeling. And I know that it goes both ways, that he wants to know how I'm feeling. And I look forward to seeing him. he's working late tonight, so he's not going to be home for a few hours. And I'm genuinely gutted that I don't get to see him tonight. Whereas before, I was like, oh, he's not in, amazing. I can, watch a film on my own. I can go to bed early. I can do all these things. Now I'm like, oh, actually, I miss him. And one of the things that I have done for myself in this whole process is prioritizing my sleep is key for me. But I also didn't want him to feel rejected if I went to bed early just randomly one night, because part of his feeling is that he doesn't want to be, he feels unwanted. That is his sort of, as you would say, his messages. He feels unwanted, he feels rejected. So having that in the back of my mind whenever I do something or have a conversation with him, to make sure that I don't trigger those insecurities in him, has been really helpful. But at the same time, balancing it between, me and what I want. So I decided just before Christmas that on a Monday and a Wednesday evening, after I put the kids to bed, I would go straight to bed myself. And I told him that. And I said, so this is what's happening on a Monday and a Wednesday. I will go to bed as soon as the kids have gone to bed. I won't come downstairs because we'll get caught up in a chat. But I want you to know that that's what I'm doing, that it's not about rejection. It's not about being unwanted. It's about actually, I need to prioritize my sleep. A couple of nights a week, I need to get to bed early. I need to do that for me. And he's like, wow, I love that. I love that. That means on a Monday and a Wednesday, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do all these things that I want to do. And I was like, it's going to be amazing. Anyway, so today's Thursday. Like yesterday would have been a Wednesday. But because he's out tonight, I think a year ago, I'd just gone to bed early yesterday because that was what I was going to do. But actually, I didn't. I put the kids to bed and I came downstairs. And he even turned around and he was in his office. He was like, it's Wednesday. What are you doing down here? I said, well, I'm not going to see you tomorrow because you're working late. So I wanted to spend time with you today. And he got so excited. And he was like, oh, okay, well, let's do this, let's do that, and let's get snacks. And it was just that like, that shift makes me feel connected, makes me want to just like grab him and snog him, because, I can be who I want to be without sacrificing anything of me and without triggering any of his insecurities. And it works. It works. So yeah, that's where we are today, having snacks and snogging.
Yeah, I love it. So no divorce talk anymore. I'm assuming.
No divorce talk at all. And actually, what was happening was, like, every couple of weeks he'd bring up something. I wouldn't say pick a fight. He wouldn't pick a fight, but he would bring up something, and I'd be like, oh my god, this again. I thought we dealt with this. Almost 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. And in fact, I remember being on a call on a Monday night, saying to you in late summer, I don't know why I'm on this call. Everything's amazing. Don't know why I'm on this call. I've joined it because it's Monday, but I don't need you because life's amazing. And then literally like 24 hours later, that conversation reared its head and it all just fell apart. We haven't had that conversation in probably this year.
Wow.
Like, we haven't had that conversation this year. And the conversation we have now is usually, are we still on the same page? Do we both still want this? Let's talk about where we're at. And that is not a heavy conversation. That is let's just double check. And it's usually, so that's what happened this morning. It was are we both still on the same page here conversation? And that was because, the kids have been at school last week. Work's been mad. We actually haven't had any time together one-on-one for probably about 2 weeks. And it was that meant that kind of triggered that check-in. And it was simply a check-in. Whereas before, it would have been a massive disconnect. It was a check-in that led to a connection. And it was over the phone in the car. Like, those conversations are not something I've been thinking about, over the phone in the car. But it was, and it felt good for both of us. So yeah, I'm happy to have those kind of conversations as much as either of us need to, because I no longer walk away from a conversation feeling heavy, ever.
Wow, that's incredible. Amazing. Samantha, you've made so much progress, and it's just so beautiful to see your family, keeping the family together and turning this relationship around. So what would you say to a woman who, say, she's just come back from a holiday and her husband said that he thinks he wants a divorce? She's exhausted, walking on eggshells, not knowing what to do. Like, what would you say to like yourself, basically, like a year and a half ago, whenever it was, or someone who's struggling?
I would say join those group calls, start those modules, and trust the process, because some things were instant. Some things were instant. Some things within me took a bit of time. I'm still working on my own insecurities and how that triggers it. But knowing what those insecurities are, knowing that they trigger, is something that I wouldn't have ever been able to do without going to the group sessions, going to the modules, having my one-to-ones. That is how I've learned that. And I now recognize it when it happens. One day, it won't happen at all because there'll be nothing to trigger. But that is progress. And that's been, pretty much since day one, that sort of progress. The progress in our marriage took a little bit longer because, whilst we say we're not waiting for them, we are, like, we want to. You can do all this work on yourself, but if you walk into the room and someone doesn't smile at you, that does hurt, and no matter how much work you do, not getting that smile, it does hurt. And it took me a little bit longer than I would have liked to get that smile. Now he's bounding towards me with snacks because he's so excited that I'm here. And I'm excited. And had I known that it was less than a year ago that that's where I would be now, I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have believed it.
That's amazing. Oh, Samantha, I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of you. I know you've worked so hard. Before we wrap this up, tell me, what is the one thing that you're most proud of for your journey over this last year?
I'm proud to have taken the leap, and I'm proud of the woman that I am today.
Wow, incredible. Oh, Samantha, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. And I'm sure that your journey will inspire so many other women who were in your shoes a year ago. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sophie.
Thank you so much for joining me for today's Love Life lesson. If this episode spoke to you, if it opened something in your heart, or if you're ready to create deeper connection in your marriage, make sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you want to take this work further, you will find resources, programs, and next steps waiting for you in the show notes. I'm rooting for you. I believe in you and I believe in your relationship, and I will see you in the next episode.